naturally occurring psychoactive compound, psilocybin, is found in over 200 species of mushrooms. Despite their millennia of use by humans for mental and spiritual well-being, they have been classified falsely among the most dangerous and illegal of substances, locked away from those who need them most. The Psilocybin Chronicles documents the individuals who courageously consume, collect, or cultivate these mushrooms to improve the quality of their lives. Won't you join us as we welcome the return of psilocybin? Welcome to the Psilocybin Chronicles. I am your host, Eric Osborne. Chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you have heard of the nonprofit organization MAPS. If you didn't know or you've never heard of MAPS, this acronym stands for Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. Aside from helping to move psychedelics such as psilocybin into the public view, MAPS has done some very important work in what psychedelic professionals call harm reduction. While the bulk of MAPS' work is geared towards advancing clinical studies, the group also recognizes the widespread use of psychedelics in a non-medical application. And while psychedelics are generally considered safe, we must also recognize the risks involved. In an effort to ameliorate some of these risks, particularly in the festival scene, MAPS formed the Zendo Project to help serve this population and prevent unnecessary negative outcomes. From their website, maps.org, the Zendo Project mission statement reads, "It is our mission to 1. Provide a supportive space for guests undergoing difficult psychedelic experiences or other psychological emergencies in order to transform potentially traumatic experiences into valuable learning opportunities, and to reduce the number of drug-related psychiatric hospitalizations. 2. To provide an environment where volunteers can work alongside one another to improve their therapeutic skills and receive training and feedback. And 3, to demonstrate that the psychedelic community can take care of its own without the need for law enforcement-based policies." These are important goals, and this episode highlights exactly why information and education is so very important and why silence around psychedelics is significantly more dangerous than an open dialogue. The conversation you're about to listen to is one of the more difficult ones that I've had with a guest. And while there are many positive elements to this story, I cannot help but acknowledge how a little bit of knowledge could save many lives. Please understand, I do not encourage illegal activity. I know firsthand the consequences of administering or cultivating psilocybin outside of the law. Much of the work that I'm doing with Myco Meditations and Pledge and the Psilocybin Chronicles is meant to reduce the harm and the risk that comes along with consuming these mind-altering substances. My guest this episode is Jamie Pratt. Jamie is a part-time screen printer and a full-time stay-at-home cat dad. He spent many years immersed in the Louisville music community as a promoter, venue proprietor, and record label owner. Before grief over the death of his younger brother in a psilocybin mushroom-related accident caused him to withdraw, Jamie was also a traveling musician. He currently spends his time writing, gardening, and traveling when he isn't slowly re-entering the world. A fellow Louisvillian, Jamie, joined us on the retreat this year. Jamie and I did not know each other prior to meeting in Jamaica, but I have a feeling that this new friend and I will be spending some time together in the States as well. His story touches my heart, and his courage in sharing it, I'm sure, will be an inspiration to you. And hopefully it will also remind us of the importance of harm reduction, and that while, as I've mentioned many times, psilocybin is physiologically safe, that does not mean it is without risks. I hope you enjoy this episode, and I hope you, like myself, gain an even greater respect for the mushroom and the care that is required in engaging with this very powerful substance. All right, Jamie, thank you for joining me on the Psilocybin Chronicles. It's a pleasure to sit down with you again.
Thanks for having me.
Very, very different territory.
This isn't where we left the car.
No, this is not. This is not where we got off the bus.
No.
Yeah, this is really, really awesome to me to be coming back and in Kentucky and being able to have a close personal contact with someone that joined us in Jamaica. That's really rare.
Well, it's pretty crazy that we're just down the street from each other, but we had to go to a completely different country to meet each other.
Well, the irony hits me all the time that my community is becoming global through Jamaica, right? The friends that I'm getting the closest to right now are people who are coming from all around the world.
Yeah.
And so it's ironic to me that I leave my home city and go and make friends and build community elsewhere. So it really means a lot to me, honestly, man, to have you here and to know that that connection continues and that community can be here.
It is possible.
It is possible. Yeah. I mean, you and I have talked a lot about the struggles about the community here locally, and that's all stuff that we can talk about later. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about all that. I want to jump right into the meat of our conversation. So, as I always like to ask, if there was one person who you could dose mushrooms with through time and history, who might that be?
I think the person that comes to mind immediately for me would be Joe Strummer from The Clash.
Oh, okay.
Because he was someone who was like top of the world and let his whole ego just destroy his whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of fell down into the muck. And during that period, he discovered like communal living and hippie life and turned into this like blissful character. And I'm pretty sure he probably dosed during that time because he totally, everything about him changed from anger to peace. So I think like he would have a very good perspective to share through that kind of a trip.
And can you see that transition in his musical career?
Oh yeah. If you compare like The Clash, kind of anger, and then he disappears for 10 years in music, and then comes back with this like kind of like blissful, almost trippy reggae folk project, the Mescaleros, where he's just.
I'd say he was dosing.
Because band's called the Mescaleros, so something was going on there. But it's just his whole attitude had changed, and he didn't have an ego about it. He just enjoyed performance at that point, and it was just a total flip in him.
Interesting.
And I think he died very happy.
Huh. Oh, wow. I have to look into that. It sounds like a really interesting story. So let's talk about your initial exposures to psilocybin, even from a theoretical standpoint.
I don't really remember like the theory. It's one of those just things that show up in the Louisville party scene every once in a while. And I was out, hanging out with some friends in this warehouse, and someone brought it out, and all 12 of us dosed. And it was very much just like I was in the state of mind in that time where I was open to new experience and just kind of went with it. And we just ended up having like a crazy carnival party night, in the warehouse, and wearing capes and climbing around the rafter, just total like goofy night. So that was my first exposure.
Had you even heard of psilocybin before that, or magic mushrooms? How old were you?
I was been probably 23, 24, somewhere in there. I'm sure I'd heard of it, but I didn't really have a frame of reference.
It just wasn't on your radar.
Yeah. For me, it was just like, I knew I didn't want to do LSD because I didn't trust the chemical process of making it or who was making it. And if I didn't know who was making it, I wouldn't want to do it. But stuff like mushrooms or, cannabis, I had never been afraid of because to me they were just more natural. So I was just like, oh, it's this plant that does this thing to you, and I didn't have like that fear of it. So it just appeared. I went with it.
And I guess you guys just ate whatever you ate, a handful. You didn't measure the weight.
It was in chocolate, so I have no idea how much I had. And it was just kind of like I trusted the person who was dosing everybody to, not make us.
Yes, send you to the outer space.
Which now that I've had this experience with you, I'm just like, that could have been all bad.
There were a few times in the past where I dosed people a little heavier than intended. I mean, some teas, like 7 years ago, I remember we had a small party at the house, and I just made tea, and it just, like 3 people just got blasted, and so that consistency. Yeah, there's definitely good reason to be mindful of who you are dosing with and who you are taking these substances from. So, after that, how did the relationship develop?
it's one of those, just every once in a while someone would be like, oh, I found some, and a couple times it would just be more of like a friends getting together to listen to music and then dose, and those were more, I guess, spiritual than any of the other experiences I had, where it wasn't just a party. It was everyone had their own individual take on it, and some people, in one of those, someone kind of manifested some childhood trauma that they didn't even know existed, and like kind of went into like a little bit of a PTSD like moment with it, where they were reliving this moment where they were abused. And then we made sure that they were safe and comfortable, and kind of put them under this like beautiful tree, and they like sat there and like fell in love with this tree while they were working through that trauma a little bit. So I think that wasn't the second time I ever took it, so I think I already had experienced like both sides of the drug by that point, where it's like you can party with it, but you can also like get to some deep stuff.
Right. So in that scenario, was there any kind of like follow up with that individual? Did the thing just happen and nobody talked about it, or did you discuss it later?
We talked about it a little bit. Probably not as much as we should have. I mean, we were 24 and still kids, and it was more just like, whoa, that came up, or you're doing okay. We would check in, but I don't know if he ever like went to therapy for that or worked through that again. Right. He seems like he's doing better in general, but it probably should have been followed up a lot more. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's a lot of what happens. People are having these experiences, and the legal nature or the lack of knowledge around it, it's like you have this experience, and then it gets weird, and people are uncomfortable about talking about it, or like, oh, what do I do? How do I help? And I don't know what to do. And then so a lot gets left behind. I think, obviously you have a very profound story about the mismanagement of psilocybin. That I know it surely can't be easy to talk about.
I think it's easier after this last trip where I dealt with a lot of that. Not this last trip like dosing, but the trip to Jamaica. So yeah, my third experience after this experience with the person wasn't actually my own experience. It was my brother's experience. He was away at college for his first semester of school and dosed, and he had no experience with it before, no prior knowledge, and I don't think anyone was there with him. I think he was just, I'm going to try this thing. Oh, it's it's like weed. I can handle this. Didn't handle it. He ended up kind of running around the dorm naked, popping in and out of people's rooms. And at some point, someone called security, and he, saw authority, fear, and ran. And security chased him. And he went to go hide in his room, and what he thought was the closet was actually the window to his dorm room, and he fell 28 stories to his death. And yeah, so that was my third experience with mushrooms, but it's a very tragic one. And
how did your family respond and process this? What type of, how much information were you given by his friends and those that knew what was going on as to, to the whole scenario?
We didn't know a lot of his friends who were at the school. It was, he had a really tight community in Louisville because he was part of the music scene, and we talked to a lot of them, but they didn't really have a perspective on that night or the events leading up to that night. My father, who hadn't spoken to either of us in years, we had kind of cut him off after my parents got divorced because he, never made an effort really. He kind of came out of nowhere and tried to file a lawsuit against the school, and me and my mom had to put an end to that because it was no one's fault. Yes, security probably could have handled it better, but shit happens.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to happen like that.
Yeah.
So you're certain that this was not a a suicide attempt?
Oh, absolutely.
You know, it was purely accidental.
As a way to end his suit, we filed our own suit with a lawyer we trusted who wasn't, like, the person that my dad was using was one of those ambulance chasing, like, just people who prey on tragedy. It was very obvious. So we got someone we trusted to get all the police reports, and he, did the legal research. It was like, no, there's no legal precedent for this. There's this case, where stuff like this with schools gets thrown out. Like, this isn't worth pursuing. And he gave me the file, and I was the one in the family who read the file and read all the, like, first-hand accounts from the people there, and really, like, synthesized the story for the rest of the family. I took that on myself, and it was probably pretty damaging that I did that, in terms of my own healing, because it was, like, a little too much information.
Right.
But, it was very obvious where he was blissful. He was walking into people's rooms and just hanging out and having a good time and, like, just being his funny self. And then his roommate was actually in the room and saw what happened. Yeah. So there was a very clear, like, first-hand account of seeing the person full of terror running through the room, being chased by somebody. Like,
right. Holy fuck.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So
I can't even find words to tell you how just courageous I think that it is that you went back to psilocybin, knowing what could have come out.
Yeah. Well, I knew what could have come out, but I also knew the good it does. The previous times I had done it, I wasn't necessarily working through major trauma or anything, but I definitely felt better about the world, and felt more connected to people afterwards. And, I did dose a couple times on my own after my brother died. But it was just, I was still pretty dark in the grief. I didn't take enough to really get into that, and I was surrounded by people that I didn't trust or feel safe with. So it was bad times. Or just, completely goofy, avoidant times. Neither one of them were very healthy. So it's like I think in my mind I knew it was something I would have to do eventually, possibly just to confront his last experience, but also knowing that it was a good tool for getting through my own grief and trauma and, like, depression. But, having a couple bad experiences, I think, maybe shelve it until I felt ready for it. And I just happened upon this whole retreat when I was really ready for it.
How did it unfold once you got into a scenario where you could focus and take a high enough dose? How did you process, or what did you find your experience unfolding in your experience that kind of maybe helped you work through that grief further?
None of my, like, dosing in our retreat had anything directly to do with the grief. I've had multiple people in my family die since then, so, like, I was expecting it to be all about the grief, going in, and maybe me having that expectation changed it. I think maybe if I had gone in expecting something else, it might have come out more. But for me, the initial dose was my overwhelming urge was to go check on everybody else there. And I had, like, connected to all of their stories so much that I was, like, almost, like, physically compelled to go, like, check on them. And I had to, like, force myself to sit there with it. I forced myself to not move and just really just be there with the mushroom. And that's kind of when I started getting more visual hallucinations and, like, really just kind of laughing and, like, seeing the people around me and what they were doing, and as, like, a black and white noir movie, and kind of coming up with narratives for all the people there within this movie. It was like I felt very creative all of a sudden, and that's something I had lost in grief. And one of the facilitators came up and talked to me about her brother who had died and her experience with mushrooms, processing that, and it was like I was able to flip and just be present with her and like experience her story, but it didn't really relate back to my own brother, at least in the moment. I think it made me feel better about it for sure afterwards, but it just felt good to be able to like talk about that stuff. And it was like something I had never been able to do, of just like have a natural conversation about it. So I think that was the breakthrough there with that.
Yeah. We see that a lot, that these difficult subjects can be much easier to talk about in that state, which, it might not be a direct like processing or going through some reliving some trauma or whatever, but, just being able to normalize and talk about these things that especially death is something that our culture just avoids.
Yeah, we're terrible about it.
So to sit there and the mushroom space is kind of that in-between space too, It's like, I don't know, we can talk. I think that I found it easier to talk about and explore the idea of death in the psychedelic space, because in the psychedelic space, death doesn't seem relevant to me.
Doesn't seem relevant, but you can also like almost experience death.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of be reborn after your death.
I guess that's why I say it doesn't seem relevant, because it is like so close to the experience. So it's like, why? I guess the worry around death, the fear around death, is not relevant when you're in that space, because it's kind of like halfway there anyhow.
Yeah, which makes sense why people like Huxley were dosing themselves on their deathbed. Like helped with that anxiety of death.
Yeah, transition. Man, I don't know. I've thought about you a lot since we've gotten back and wondered kind of how that process may have continued to unfold, and your reflections on your relationship with him. For me, psilocybin has definitely helped me find a lot of reconciliation, and feel like I have a cousin who passed away very early, and I have felt such a I've just been so much more okay, and I feel more connected to her now than I have in years because of these experiences. And they're just kind of I'm interested to know if you have felt any of that, if it makes any sense what I'm saying.
Yeah. I don't know if I've felt so much about my brother, because that was 12 years ago. So I think I have a little bit more distance to that experience. But my mom passed 2 years ago, and I'm still in the process of going through her home. It's my home now, and trying to synthesize her stuff with mine and get rid of things, but keep memory. It's a complicated period where, you don't want to just clear cut everything and clear the house out. You want some reminders there, but it's also what level of that is healthy. And I think I've definitely had a different perspective on that since I've been home, where it doesn't feel so daunting to navigate that. And it's helped me with feeling connected to her. And like she was a huge gardener. And since I've been home, I've taken that up. I've let the garden go at the house for years, and it needs some work now, because you can't do that with a garden. So it's felt really good to just kind of like put on the gardening hat and go work in the yard. Nice. And the hummingbirds and the butterflies are starting to come this time of year, and she used to love that. So it's been bringing a lot of just like happy memories of being with her in the yard while she's working and just hanging out. And that's definitely helped with like feeling connected to her and feeling like I think she would be proud of like the progress I've made and like how good I'm feeling, and it's made me happy.
That's great to hear, man.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. For me, gardening is one of the best integration tools.
Yeah.
You know, something about connecting to earth and those, like I said, the hummingbirds and the butterflies and all the like.
One interesting thing I've found since I've been home is like I don't want to be inside. Like Jamaica was so hot, and I've got so used to just being outside that like being in air conditioning is a little like disconcerting for me, and and it's helped me kind of keep that headspace that we had in Jamaica, just being outside and you know, listening to keeping the background the same has helped me maintain that headspace and feel like I'm still like in the work. And
what's your relationship with community been like since you've been home?
A lot better. I've been calling friends and going out to eat with them and going to see them like more than I have in years. That's something I was very like conscious of having to work on immediately when I got home, and then I really hit the ground running with that.
What's the response from your friends been like?
They've been like blown away.
Yeah,
like they can see a difference before we even interact. And they're very happy for me. And people who have known me for years have been saying like, "Oh, you finally seem like yourself again," which has been wonderful to hear and like very encouraging and makes me continue with the work. And continue connecting with people. I think there is a challenge with my life where a lot of my people are spread out around the country. Like a lot of my really close friends from here have moved away long ago. So it's hard to not be able to like see as many people face to face as I would like. And I know there's like more work to be done here of like, making an effort to meet new people and build that physical community in my immediate surroundings. But that doesn't seem as daunting as it used to be. It used to be like give me such a like major anxiety to even like think about navigating that, especially like all that stuff gets so much harder as an adult. And it's not like you're just going to a party and like, oh, I found my friends for the year, you know, until we, you know, go our separate way, you know. That's not how it works anymore. But I don't feel as like totally overwhelmed with the thought of it anymore.
I wonder how much of that is psilocybin and how much of that is Jamaica.
Well, and the retreat community itself.
Right, the community retreat.
You know, I think there's a natural tendency when you're in pain to withdraw from the group, and it's partially self-protection because you don't want to get hurt more, but it's also you're protecting the group from your pain. I think it's almost like a biological urge to protect the tribe from your pain. So to be around a group of people who are all in pain, like I think you feel safe forming attachment and community with people because you're all in it together, and you're not putting your own issues on someone who you don't think can handle it because they're right there with you. So I think that's an important aspect of it. But also Jamaica is just so welcoming and friendly and beautiful, and
the culture there is very communal. So seeing that and then coming back to this, I'm just like, no. We're gonna keep this going. You know, here we are, like even where we sit right now on the street, people are boxing their houses. I mean, we do a talk with our neighbors and whatnot, but it's just not anything like that where you wake up, you go outside, somebody else is outside, somebody's walking around, and or
even just the acknowledgement of people on the street.
Oh my gosh, right?
Yeah, we're walking around, everybody's like, hey, you know, man, respect. You know, like
so
like
here, do you find yourself doing that here?
I find myself looking people in the eye more, and acknowledging them.
Not saying "yeah, mom" to everybody on the street.
No,
acknowledging them.
Yes. I don't think I was there long enough to really make the vernacular part of my everyday life. You know, we'll see you after you're there for a couple months, and you'll be talking like that, but, which would be funny.
Boy, I'm making chop hot wall right now. Everybody see it.
I think I've been more aware of it, and just the day-to-day kind of pleasantries with, the person at the coffee shop. And like, instead of just give me my coffee, I'm like, hey, how are you doing?
I actually care about you.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
you're nice. Like, you see me all the time.
Yeah.
I should at least be able to say hi.
You know? Oh, man, wow. It is so true. It's so true. So I am really personally, on the personal level, what I'm really interested in knowing and even more so seeing your creativity and how you're reintegrating creativity back into your life.
It's been kind of amazing. I've written over 100 pages about the retreat and the aftermath.
Wow.
Like, I used to write every day, like many years ago, and like that's kind of where my trajectory was, kind of going towards writing at that point. But I've been just spewing it out on the paper, and most of that is like journal and like integrating my experience right now. But I'm also making notes for story ideas that are popping up while I'm working on this other stuff. So after I'm feeling a little more integrated, my to-do list there is growing and growing and growing.
Okay.
And I've also picked up my guitar for the first time in multiple years, and just wrote some bass lines and, learned a song and just like felt joyous playing music again.
Because you are a fucking musician, man. You love music. You are a music lover.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy to hear that is coming back.
Yeah. Well, and part of my grief was I didn't listen to music for multiple years, like at all.
Really?
Yeah. I went from running a music venue where, I put on 400 shows in 2.5 years and saw, 1,000 bands or whatever, to silence.
What?
Because I felt like that's all I had done with my life, and I needed to do something else, but I didn't really know how to get there or how to do it, and I completely disconnected from that community and from that experience, and that was a terrible idea. That was the worst thing I could have done.
Yeah.
Talk about self-sabotage, but it feels great even just listening to music and like connecting with the lyrics and, being inspired in that way. And even just like cooking, I'm cooking again, like that's creative too.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah. Gardening is creative.
Gardening is creative. Yeah. It's just, I've been active and it's not even, I'm not even forcing it or thinking about it. I'm just doing it. I'm getting up every day, still on Jamaica time, like, oh, it's 7 a.m. I'm like, I'm up. Like, and I write, and then I work in the yard or clean or garden or I'm just active.
So you said, when you talked about writing, you said the aftermath, which, indicates that the results aren't all butterflies and hummingbirds.
No.
There are things that we have to deal with after these experiences.
Yeah.
What have you been encountering there?
Well, I think it's overwhelming just to be back in American culture where everyone's so isolated. It goes back to the difference between Jamaica and here. That's definitely part of it, of just that culture shock of, and like the constant noise of the city and people, and it's just overwhelming. So that's a big challenge. But the biggest challenge is like all your problems don't just magically go away. All the stuff that's wrong with your life is still there. You have a different perspective on it. So for me, it's, I've had a lot of problems in my relationship, leading up to this over the past couple of years. Both people in the relationship had their own traumas and grief, and we definitely played off each other with that. So it's, I'm coming home feeling a lot better about all of those things. And it's been a challenge integrating with my partner again, because they aren't feeling better about those things. And it's been really explosive, and lots of fights, lots of long, exhausting emotional talks.
Do you feel like you're handling those situations differently than you would have before?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
In what ways? How you're managing the responses to those types of conflicts?
Okay. Before the experience with Jamaica, I internalized a lot more than I should have. I overanalyzed situations. I would be afraid to speak my voice. I would be very self-sacrificial and not express my needs. I would just be constantly helping the other person, to the point where it was really damaging. And now I am being more assertive about what I want and where my needs are. And that's a completely new thing for the relationship, I think. And it's like our entire relationship was based on a completely different precedent. So we're having trouble finding the middle ground there, to where neither one of us feels like we're giving too much to the other person, to where we're just in this kind of dysfunctional caretaker role, because we've traded back and forth on who's the caretaker, depending on which person is going through trauma in the relationship, because there's been death and school issues and job loss, and there's been all sorts of like life stuff happening that we've traded off on caretaking for the other person through. But it's like both of us never really found a good middle ground of being there for the other person but taking care of ourselves. And now I'm hyper aware of that. And I've also I'm so full of fear of losing this feeling that I have after the retreat that, I'm definitely fiercely defending that, probably to a fault. And, I don't want to let that feeling go. So I'm putting up more walls, I think, a little bit.
Right. Well, I mean, there's definitely value in self-preservation and maintaining your health, and one of the things that people often see through their psychedelic experience is that they have either not defined boundaries clear enough, or they have built up too many boundaries, right? So that middle ground is obviously so important.
Yeah.
And this experience that you're having within the relationship is common not just from psychedelic work, but anytime one member of a relationship goes and does anything to really break through trauma, to heal themselves, and the other person doesn't, it's going to create that distance. Our cultural knowledge around the outcome of a psilocybin therapeutic experience doesn't really allow for your partner to have been prepared for what is going to happen, what is going to come home to her, or vice versa. And that's something that I think we at Michael Meditations need to continually try to communicate and improve on, is support for those who are at home still.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm fortunate with her because she has taken psychedelics before when she was younger, and at least has a frame of reference for my experience and what happened. So I think that part of it is easier to navigate. I don't have to spend 4 hours explaining,
justifying,
how the experience happened and unfolded. I was able to jump right into here's what I got out of it, which helped. And I think I could see how partners who have no frame of reference whatsoever, it'd be a whole even new challenge.
Yeah.
Because it's hard enough. I think it would be hard enough coming back to a healthy relationship even.
Right.
So for one that's definitely not healthy, it's trying to edit
Yeah,
my words.
yeah. No, it's okay. I understand. It's a difficult thing to talk about. I mean, this is very personal.
I just want to say a shit show.
And look, sometimes they are,
Yeah.
man. Sometimes relationships are. My wife and I, 5 years have been together, and there have been some shit shows in there. So I guess for me, what it's always about is, are we both willing to do the work that's necessary? I've been in relationships where the other person wouldn't do the work. And for me, fortunately, that person bailed because I kept trying to do the work, and it was just unhealthy, So, and everybody has to find that themselves and know when, how to make the most healthy decision. And that's what my concern for all of us is that we're just doing what's the healthiest thing, And I'm really pleased and confident in your reintegration of these healthy forms of expression back into your life. And no matter what happens, I think as long as you maintain some practices that allow you to continue processing, then you're going to move in a trajectory towards health.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that. It definitely feels like I would have to really mess up to go back.
Mm-hmm.
And meeting all these amazing people really helped too. Like that alone was powerful, just
Mm-hmm.
in knowing there's people out there you can relate to still,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Mm-hmm.
will open their hearts to you.
Because we spend so much time thinking this is just me. I live in this world alone, and then you go out there and you see and hear what other people have been through, and it's like, oh wait, somebody's on my side. I've got somebody with me in this, And it was really, really awesome seeing you and everybody, but seeing you open up there in Jamaica towards people and build friendships there. You and Willa really seemed to connect. Deeply.
Well, that was great, and we kept in touch since then. Mm-hmm. We've been buds since then. That was really great. Like I knew I would get something out of it, but I wasn't expecting to open up so quickly and then become. I don't want to sound conceited saying that, but like an integral part of the group, where I felt like a touchstone for other people.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And I felt like I did work for myself, and then my second half of the retreat, I was happy to be there for other people doing the work, mm-hmm. and really getting a lot out of that, of just channeling their energy, positive and negative, into myself in a healthy way, mm-hmm. where it didn't feel like I was getting torn down. It felt like I was energized, mm-hmm. like I felt good being there for everybody. And that's a completely different experience for me. I've always felt so drained mm-hmm. by social situations, so it was really good for me to come out of it feeling energized by one.
When you are in social situations since you've been back, like the concerts that you've been to or whatnot, how are you feeling afterwards?
It's complicated because it's wrapped up into the other stuff that's going on with mm-hmm. my relationship. Mm-hmm. So those times have been bad, but it's more because stuff happens that triggers us down the we need to talk about this stuff route. But in the other, in the in between, I feel great. I feel happy to run into people I know and just shoot the shit for a minute and move on. And I don't feel full of anxiety about it. I don't feel like they're expecting me to be a certain way. So much of growing up in one place and staying there most of your life, people have a set expectation of you or mm-hmm. set image of you, mm-hmm. and a lot of people have a hard time letting go of that. I went through a period where I didn't drink at all, and I would try to go out in public and be social and re-engage with my community a little bit, and people couldn't accept that I wasn't drinking anymore, and mm-hmm. got upset about it. They wanted me to be the party guy again, and they wouldn't let me not be that guy. Mm-hmm. So it's felt really different going out now, and and that stuff may be there. I don't know, but it's not affecting me if it is. Mm-hmm. I'm not reading it. Mm-hmm. I'm more myself.
Well, all the challenges, all the difficulties in life, they're always going to be there. Psilocybin, whatever drug, none of these things take away life's challenges. They don't change the people. They may change the way that we interact with those situations and with the people.
Yeah.
And that's where the value is.
Well, for me, the psilocybin, it felt like mindfulness therapy, like 20 years of mindfulness therapy in a night, where you wake up the next day and you see the colors more vibrantly. You see the people around you more clearly. Your attention and your focus on the world is different. It's more present. And I think that's one of the most powerful things about that drug.
Absolutely. What's more important than right now, and wherever we are, and really valuing that and doing our best to clearly communicate and really be present, and So, well, what do you think about the future of psilocybin, or what are your hopes? Do you think that this is a viable therapy for the public at large?
Absolutely. I hope that it doesn't get sterilized. That they can do some scientific studies that aren't people locked in a terrifying room and
hooked up to equipment.
Maybe studying more group retreat atmospheres, or because I think it's not a drug that you can get a whole lot out of by yourself without a frame of reference. I think doing it with people is part of the power of the drug. So I'd like to see more study for that, but I also would like it to be more normalized to where people who wanted to experiment with it on their own didn't feel like they had to hide so much and didn't have to get it from maybe a sketchy situation, or not tell anyone they're doing it so they're not safe. I think a lot of just normalizing it would take away so many problems.
You have to have thought about this a million times. If there was an educated response to your brother's situation, then he would probably still be here with us today.
Yeah. Or even if he had the frame of reference to talk to me about my experience before he did, because one of his friends was present when I dosed, a month before he died. So I know part of him doing it was probably hearing that I did it. And there's definitely some guilt I had to overcome with that. And
you are a brave motherfucker, my friend. For real.
Well, thank you. Wow. So, I think if we had even been able to talk about it, it would have turned out differently.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for participating in that group. You really were a huge contribution and a massive support to people around you.
Well, and thanks for having me. It was amazing. I feel so grateful and lucky that I found it.
Yeah, I feel really grateful that you found it as well. Well, let's normalize it one step further. Let's put it on a billboard.
A billboard.
A billboard. What's that billboard gonna say?
I'm gonna say psilocybin, do the work.
Ooh, I like it.
It's a tool for the work,
exactly.
But the work is still yours to do.
Exactly. You mean, there's no running from the work. We pretend we run, and we just find ourselves in more trouble and deeper mud. So, just be here now, face it, and do the work.
Do the work.
Well, it sounds like you're doing the work, and the work can be joyful too, right? Getting back into the music, the gardening. There's a lot of joy in the work. There's also challenges in the work, and I really, really admire you speaking about it, and being open about the difficulties is part of the work as well.
Yeah, it's not all hunky-dory,
No, it gets ugly.
It gets rough.
It can be. It is not always laughing.
Yeah.
It's not always angels and aliens.
No. And I think that's one of the challenges I faced with reintegration is people think I was down there just partying and having a good time.
Yeah.
When, I was having a good time sometimes, but I was also working. It was exhausting.
Yeah.
I think if we didn't have days off where we didn't really do anything towards the end, we all would have just crashed and burned because we were exhausted.
That was really one of the I don't know if heavy is the right word, but it was an intense group. There was a lot of individual trauma, deep stuff.
Yeah. Well, and everyone came there like ready to work
to
and like fight the war. We
Yeah.
were like, we're sick of this. We're gonna do this work, and we dove right in.
Yeah, and it was outstanding to see, and that's why we saw so much progress. So
Yeah, it was amazing watching everybody open up as the week went on. Like it felt really good. Even Nick. Like,
oh no, I just got a story about him yesterday. He's continuing to open up.
Awesome.
Yes.
Like, yeah, it was great where he was in the shadow when he got there, and by the end he was cracking jokes and part of the group, and it was amazing.
I really have one of the greatest jobs on this planet.
You do.
I am so grateful.
And you're very good at it.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. All right, well, it has been a real pleasure talking with you, and I am looking forward to our less formal times where we just get out and maybe go enjoy some music or a drink or walking in the park.
Or a nice
mushroom
bonfire.
picking or a bonfire.
Bonfire.
All kinds of fun things.
Oh,
we can
man. Friends.
do. Yes, indeed. All right, brother. Thanks for joining me again.
Thank you.
Friends, that is one authentic human being. Jamie, you are a beautiful soul, and it is a pleasure, truly a pleasure to know you. You have a big heart, brother, and you're a light in the shadows. I'm going to close out with a song that is one of my personal favorites and was just too fitting to pass up, especially considering where Jamie and I first met. You may have, or I'm sure you've heard this song before, most likely from its original author, Robert Nesta Marley, also known as Bob Marley. This version, however, is performed by Joe Strummer, who Jamie mentioned he would like to eat some mushrooms with, and his band, the Mescaleros. Pay close attention to the spoken words of Joe at the beginning and the song following. Jamie, this one's for you, brother. You are a redeemer, and you have my utmost respect.
I'd like to say that people can change anything they want to. And that means everything in the world. Show me any country, and there'll be people in it. It's trying to take the humanity back into the center of the ring and follow that for a time. Think on that. Without people, you're nothing.
Old pirates, yes, they rob I, sold I to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit, but my hand was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophet while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We got to fulfill the book. So won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs. Old pirates, yes, they rob I, sold I to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took high from the bottomless pit. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We got to fulfill the book. So won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, these songs of freedom. 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs, these songs of freedom, these songs of freedom.
Just to confront his last experience, but also knowing that it was a good tool for getting through my own grief and trauma and like depression. But you know, having a couple bad experiences, I think maybe shelve it until I felt ready for it. And I just happened upon this whole retreat when I was really ready for it.
So how